Time to smash it up again on a Monday night. This is an emergency edition of the Monday Smash because we're going to have a full-fledged panel of Warchant.com analysis coming your way here shortly. He's Ira Schafel. My name is Tom Lang. He's the managing editor of Warchant.com. I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that for Warchant, and right now I'm commiserating with Ira to start the show saying, folks, it might be time to smash it up, but we hope you didn't smash your living rooms up on a Saturday night in the second half of that football game. We're going to discuss that, the implications, how Florida State got here, and so much more over the next hour. But we start with the pleasantries. Good evening, Ira. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I feel like the smash goes with the theme of, break in case of emergency. Like that's what we're doing. That's why we're bringing in the emergency panel. We're smashing the glass and we're convening the emergency roundtable to get some different perspectives on what's going on with Florida State football.
Yeah, that's the point tonight, is to get perspectives on how Florida State got here, macro topics. But there is obviously going to be a little bit of discussion tonight about the quarterback position at Florida State, because earlier today, Ira, there was a depth chart development where Brock Glenn's name was in bold, just like DJU's, and there was an or next to his name, meaning either of the two quarterbacks could start. Mike Norvell was asked about that and said, that doesn't matter at all. Okay, flash forward a few hours, and now obviously there are reports out there that DJU will not be available for some period of time, and Brock Glenn is likely going to be the starter. Further information on that's available at warchant.com, but initially, Ira, and any general thoughts you might have before we get into the big stuff?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it matters, in terms of the case of this game. We've been saying for the last couple of weeks, a lot of us wanted to see Brock Glenn get some action just to, kind of see what he could do, and maybe his mobility might help this offense give it a spark. The problem is, it's happening against Clemson's defense, which is the best defense by far they've faced, maybe the best defense they'll face all season, especially that front seven. So it's you kind of feel bad for Brock Glenn. I mean, like, you're happy he's going to finally get an opportunity, but this might not be the opportunity he was looking for.
I like the attitude that CG's bringing to the table. He says, hold on, everybody, let me pour a drink. If you want to, it's that kind of a night. We're going to sit back and we're going to relax here. Maybe we can talk Ira into another shot. It wasn't for a Nole victory, but maybe for just having to discuss through this mess. One thing that can help you if there's a mess of a situation is good insurance. There's a segue for you right now. That's our sponsor tonight, is State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. To all the folks throughout the state of Florida, obviously our hearts and minds are with you, and Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, especially if you're up in the mountains up there. If you're a Nole fan watching this tonight, maybe for a bit of a distraction, it's not the most positive news for your football team, but as a distraction, we're grateful you're here. And again, our hearts go out to you. But in situations like that, you need a lot of things to be on your side, Ira, and insurance is one of them. So, if you're not in an affected area and you want to check on your insurance needs, maybe am I covered for this or that? State Farm agent Russ Voorhis is available to help you in the state of Florida, in the state of Georgia, the entire state of Alabama as well. And he's a bona fide Nole. He's having a rough go just like we all are right now.
Yeah, I was talking to him. Actually, I was talking to Russ yesterday, and he was. I was asking if he's coming to the town for the Clemson game, and he said he is. He's planning on it. He's, obviously he's got his tickets, his mobile home, and everything set up for the trip. But he also is really busy. And so he's wondered, maybe he's so busy, maybe he won't make it over. But now Russ is a huge Nole, and like you said, he wears on his sleeve, just like most of the people watching this. And he does a great job, obviously, with all your insurance needs. And they have offices, brick and mortar offices, over in the Jacksonville areas. For people that live in Jacksonville, they can go meet him in person. If you inquire online or you call, mention the Monday Smash, and also warchant.com.
Make sure to mention that. And for those of you listening on the podcast version of this show, it's Russ Voorhis is his name for the website, RUSSVORHIS.com. That's RussVoorhis.com. His two brick and mortar operations are in Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park. All right. We have the pleasantries out of the way. It's not going to be a pleasant hour, but maybe we can make you laugh to save yourself from crying. That's what's coming up next right here on Warchant TV as we welcome in the Warchant.com panel in 15 seconds.
Contact Russ Voorhis for an auto quote today.
Here we go. We've got the panel here, everybody. Flex on them. It's time. Thumbs up if you believe Florida State can win 4 games this year. Just want to put thumbs up. Corey does. Okay. So Corey's 2 thumbs up for Corey. He's Corey Clark. He's Aslan Hajavandi. He's Gene Williams. They're all here. They all have beautiful working titles, but you know them as the heart and soul of warchant.com and also Warchant TV. And tonight, guys, we're going to open up with a large discussion, a little bit about how we got here to 1-4, and then obviously the implications of what comes next. I do want to start about back in spring, let's call it spring camp, off-season work, tour of duty. Guys, I got to come down here for a couple of practices here and there. And in some ways, that's a bit of a strength because if something looked out of place, I might have noticed and said, they don't look like that they're working at the same level that the 2023 team did or the 2022 team did. I didn't detect any of that. But the weakness is I didn't see the consistency of either spring camp and then all the way through to fall camp. So, Corey, I'll start with you. You take copious notes when you're here for all those practices, especially with the skill position players. You watch it very closely. I mean, folks don't realize Corey will get pissed off if they're throwing against air and a kid's technique catching the football is wrong. So Corey is very down in the granular details. Did you detect anything like this was possible? Were there any, in retrospect, Corey, were there any habits you saw or work ethic things that led you to believe that maybe a big disappointment was coming?
No. Next question.
All right. Aslan, you shoot the video for all these practices, the first 4 periods. In a way, you watch it closer than anybody. Did you see anything like that coming out of practice? You are currently muted. Let's see if we
can. Rookie over here. Trying to multitask over here. Not a good idea. Focused on with all of you. I don't think so during spring, Tom. There was nothing, optimism springs eternal in the spring. So I didn't see anything for the spring. And listen, I'm not going to try to act like, I saw 1-4 coming at all. But some of the things that we all were worried about was obviously a number 2 wide receiver, which I don't know if we can really contextualize or give like an empirical reason to as how's that showing up in this 1-4 start. But just like the in season, I would say, which might not be part of the question you're going towards, Tom, but just like these last 3-4 weeks, there have just been pre-snap penalties in practice. That's stuff that you never really saw last year. There were some just meandering possessions, if you will, in very important 11-on-11 periods. I think either Wednesday or Tuesday when they're getting ready for SMU. I mean, period 3 is the first 11-on-11 period of the day. You've done 10 minutes of individual work. You should be excited to go to 11-on-11. You're installing and you're working through a real game situation. And nothing's open downfield. I mean, you're rolling out, and then you throw the ball away. That might have happened once or twice with Jordan, but best believe, like the very next play, he fires it down the field for a 15, 20-yard gain. So some of the scout stuff, I think that even Corey mentioned maybe in the last few weeks, like you saw scout team defense, or rather scout team offense, moving the ball on the defense during in-season practice. That's stuff that we didn't see at all last year.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, the same thing in the fall for me. Again, Ira, you can blend your answer across, the entirety of the year. But when I got down here for the 10 practices that I saw over the course of the 2 camps, it looked like it was literally the same script that they followed. But the only thing I thought, and I think we all discussed it to different degrees on our various formats and shows, this team wasn't as good as its predecessors, or specifically 2023. It wasn't as good as 2023. But it didn't look like that there were going to be problems on this level. How do you make sense of that if you can in retrospect, or do you think that this is just about a team that practiced okay, but for some reason they couldn't do it on a game day through 5 games?
To me, I think there's 2 different discussions really, going back to the spring and the preseason and then what Aslan's talking about the last few weeks. I think once this team lost the first couple games, I do feel like the practices have they've devolved a little bit. Part of it, those guys aren't not being available, and maybe offensive linemen not being available. There are times at practice where there are dudes playing on the offensive line that are not going to be playing in those positions on Saturday. So sometimes it's hard to evaluate, is the quarterback having to eat that pass because that offensive line can't block that defensive line, or is it just these receivers can't get open? And then the other part of it, the thing that really makes covering practice difficult is you go in with some premonitions of what you think certain things are. Like what are your baseline things? And I think if you go back to preseason camp, we felt like, man, these defensive backs are not letting these receivers get open. Okay, so that clearly means these defensive backs are really good, but you don't know how bad the receivers are, because you're seeing them against these DBs. Same thing on the defensive line and offensive line. We thought this offensive line was going to be very good, partly because it's so experienced and partly because the coaching staff was so confident in this offensive line. And they're going up against an experienced defensive line. So, again, you kind of go into the season with some, baseline things that you believe. And then once you get into the season and you see things get exposed, you realize, oh, maybe that's not exactly what I thought. And if that wasn't what I thought, then that changes your whole perspective on what you saw. So a lot of this kind of evolves over time. Yeah, looking back, you could see, and we talked about the receivers back during preseason. I mean, nobody was high on this receiving core since Keon and Johnny and those guys left. But you thought they'd at least be able to run the football. That, to me, is the biggest problem. If you can't run the football, if you told all of us they would not be able to run the football, we all would have been like, oh, man, they're going to be screwed. How are they going to move the ball with this quarterback and these receivers?
Yeah, exactly. That the basis by which they built the roster this year was around running the football. I mean, that's the way they approached the portal. You don't bring DJU in to throw the ball 40 times a game. That's never been a good idea. So, just the way that they constructed the roster, the way Mike Norvell talked about it in the offseason, you felt like, they are banking on being able to run the ball, and they have not been able to do so. I'm going to ask Gene Williams and Corey the next question. Gene, you first. You've been around this program for decades. You've got a great memory for this stuff, just like, Corey does. He's an encyclopedia on these things. Are there any comps in your lifetime of watching Florida State in terms of what they were going to be or what they were thought to be versus what they were, or even follow-up seasons, a moment of success versus a blip? Do you have anything that you can relate this to in the past?
Well, Tom, I'm old, but I'm not Daryl Mudra old. I was not around for, was that 72, Corey? Was that the year?
Yeah. So, 73 was the year they went winless, but that was Larry Jones.
Yeah. Okay.
Get off my man Mudra. That was a Larry Jones team that went winless.
I wasn't around these parts those days, but I mean, that would be in terms of being bad. But I think, Tom, you're getting at, which really is the bigger question, is a team that's had the expectations that this one did. And to turn around and so flat on its face, the only thing even comparable slightly is 2001. And I think part of that, and it definitely didn't fail to the extent, not even close to this. But I think a similar situation where you had so much after 14 years of top 5 finishes, you had so many notions and assumptions you made that this coaching staff's been successful, they're recruiting through the roof, everything's going to be fine. Maybe you dip off and you only win 10 games this season. It's not going to be that big of a drop-off. In hindsight, looking at this, look, we assumed Mike Norvell and the staff have done nothing but improve this program until they went 13-0 last year. And he's owned the portal. Certainly all these cast-offs he got from Alabama and LSU and Auburn and all these places, these guys are going to pan out. They had great recruiting pedigrees, the experienced offensive line. We just made all these assumptions based on history. And frankly, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I was flat out wrong on a lot of this stuff. And you mentioned the rushing. I mean, how do we assume a coach that is so emphasized rushing, going back to Memphis and all this time at FSU right now ranks 130 in rush offense. I mean, going into the season, that is unfathomable that would have happened. So I think a lot of it is we made assumptions based on the history of this coaching staff and this program and the direction it was headed. And frankly, that's the thing. I mean, those assumptions were just dead wrong in hindsight.
Yeah. So Corey, I mean, it's kind of the same question, but any precedent for this? I know, often you remark more than anybody that, this is a day where you've never seen something like this before. You've got a Tim Kirkjian spirit to you that that when you show up at the ballpark, you're going to see something you've never seen. Unfortunately, this is on the wrong side of the ledger. Just, is there a way that you can lend your perspective to how it is they've done this? Was this even in your worst nightmare scenario through 5 games? What would your worst nightmare scenario have been? Any of those questions that stick out to you?
I would have said 3-2 would have been a nightmare with considering who the first 5 games were. 3-2 would have been rough. 1-4 was not even on my list of things that could happen. I kind of would compare it a little bit to 17. They were number 3 in the country when that season started. And then, they lose their first 4 games or went 1-4 or something like that. And Jimbo ended up quitting or getting fired. Like all that happened in 2017. This coach isn't getting fired. So there really isn't a precedent for this. But that's what I think Florida State fans are worried most about. You thought you had a great program, one of the best in the country. Just like you did 10 years ago. You thought you had a program that was going to cycle through and have 10-win seasons year after year after year. And then it fell off a cliff. And now they're wondering if it's happening again because, man, The 5 years from 18 to 22 or 23, those were rough 5 years. And I think Florida State fans are genuinely concerned. Are you about to have another half decade of irrelevance? Was that just a 2-year peak? And now you've fallen off the mountaintop again? This has happened again? So 17 is the only one that I can think that comes close to that. But again, the good news is that you can turn over rosters a lot quicker now. You can turn over coaching staffs. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But you can change programs quicker than you've ever been able to. But do we trust that these are the coaches you want making those changes right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something we'll talk about. Your questions are coming up here soon. We've got some subscriber questions from warchant.com. For those of you that are watching right now, Warchant TV will be taking your questions as well over the course of the next 40 minutes. But I'll go to Ira and Aslan next. Just in terms of confidence level, that Mike Norvell can be the one to guide this through the darkness. You know, there was a period of time when he was hired, nothing was going well. They were 0-4, and he was able to steer it into a better place where they won 19 straight in ACC championship. In this case, he made his own mess that he has to clean up versus trying to fix somebody else's mess. Ira, just your thoughts on that. I hate to use the term, but that climb he has in front of him. Do you think he's capable of navigating it?
I mean, he's capable, but it's definitely going to be. I would say the odds are against him. I think if you look in the history of college football, there are very few coaches that kind of have success, a huge drop off like this, and then just rebound. You know, you might have a blip because maybe a roster situation, especially as Corey said in the old days, where you had a team with all seniors and you had you had a step back year the next year with the younger team. But in this day and age, it's a different era. You know, the rosters are so malleable. So I don't, the odds are going to be against him. But to me, the only chance he has is to make major changes, but also to take a critical eye at everything in the program. You know, when you're having success, Mike Norvell has been a head coach now for 9 years, 10 years. He was at Memphis, had success there to a point where he went to a Cotton Bowl. It's the first time that school had ever gotten to that level. Tremendous success. That's what got him the Florida State job. He comes here and in his third year turns it around. Fourth year goes 13-1. So he's had no real reason to change what he does or to really kind of make massive changes during his tenure at a school. This is going to be new for him. So to say that he can do it or he's going to do it, I mean, I can't predict that. I do think he's super smart. I think he works really hard. I think he's got, he's got a good basis of what he wants to do. But man, he clearly has made a bunch of bad decisions. We talked about the bad assumptions we made watching this team. He made a lot worse assumptions about this football team. And, but he's got to be honest with himself and realize it's not just a matter of getting Brock Glenn more time at quarterback or Cromenhawk or these receivers or, it's going to require a massive change. And the only way he's got a chance is if he does that.
Aslan, same question to you. I mean, obviously, in Dublin, you had the unique opportunity of being down on the sidelines to kind of feel that first game and some of the disappointment that came with that first game. I saw your eyes perk up when Ira said the odds are against him potentially, for being able to execute another rebuild of sorts. What say you?
Well, I was late to the party in believing that he actually could be the guy that could turn this thing around. So I'm going to be the last guy to jump off the ship too. So I'll somewhat remain optimistic that he can do it. I guess in terms of like a precedent, I don't know if can we look at Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, guys? He got them to the national title game in 12. They got boat raced by Bama, kind of meandered around for a few years. I think he had to do a full reset. He kind of had to do a Jimbo going into 2013 where he kind of cleaned house and got some, new guys around him and then was able to get back into the playoff once or twice at Notre Dame. So I totally agree though with Ira's, sort of sentiment there with it. It's tough to build things back, have it crumple and then rebuild it back again. But again, I was so wrong in terms of, I just didn't think Mike was ever going to be able to win something even like close to 13 games in the season at Florida State. And he went ahead and did that. So I'll remain somewhat confident that he can replicate it. But my biggest concern, I guess now, spinning it however we want to go with this, Tom, is just, the voices that bought into his message last year and in the last 2 years, like guys like Jared Verse, like Braden Fisk, Jarian Jones, guys of that caliber, not only so much like being awesome football players, but just being supreme alpha males in a locker room. The fact that they bought into his messaging and believed in him so much, that's what makes me believe that there's going to have to be another crop of highly talented athletes that's going to buy in to Norvell's message because he's done it once before, but I just don't know. The guys like that don't grow on trees. And can you have the stars and planets and moons align so that you get 7, 8 of that caliber of player to be on your roster at one point? That's going to be sort of the really tough thread to the needle rather to thread for Norvell moving forward.
Can we all agree that what you're talking about, Aslan, there, like that alpha presence, I didn't feel that in practice from many players. I thought that they were going to have to find out who they were on game days. Is that fair, Corey? Is that a fair thing to say? For, like in terms of the personalities, the guys that you knew were at the top of the leadership chain, is it fair to say that was still not determined other than maybe just by position on a depth chart before?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And it was a concern. One of the concerns we had is especially on offense, like you bring in a quarterback that nobody knows. That's a quiet kid. Your offensive line, they're your experienced guys. Other than Jeremiah Byers, none of them they're not vocal guys. They're not those type of Jared Verses. They don't talk a lot. They're not vocal. The receivers are not vocal. The running backs are not vocal. Like they didn't have that guy, Trey Benson, Jordan Travis, obviously great players. They were also leaders, not just by example. And then on defense, same thing. You lost some big time talent, but you lost some big time leaders. Those 2 linebackers were leaders. And you brought back Shaheem. That's the guy that talks. That's the guy that's supposed to be the leader. Well, he missed a game. So there's just none of the pieces have fit this year, but I've always thought that going back to the spring, I'm like, man, there's not a lot of personality on this team. That doesn't mean they can't win. Clearly that we didn't think they were going to be 1-4, but I would have liked to have seen, and I did not see and have not seen any type of leadership at all on the offensive side. And Mike Norvell talked about that a lot on Monday, said the real ones, this is when they stand up. And he kept saying, or he said, I think we got real ones in this locker room. I think he might just be saying that. I don't think he's convinced of that. In fact, I think he's convinced of the opposite, but he's not going to say that in public. He doesn't have any real ones in that. He doesn't have many real ones in that locker room. Not yet. The young guys might be there, but they're not here yet. And the older guys are either not playing well or they're quiet as mouse or mice. And it's just not a great combination.
Tom, can I jump in real quick?
Yep.
The only thing I would say, man, I'd push back in the sense that I don't know that, Johnny Wilson didn't talk. Keon Coleman didn't talk. Jordan Travis didn't really talk.
But Jordan was a leader, Ira, right?
Yeah, no, I know. But I think that comes out of Jordan became a leader when he became a great player. If you when he was 3 or 4 years ago and they brought in Mackenzie Milton, part of why they brought in Mackenzie Milton is because Jordan didn't know how to be a quarterback. He didn't know how to lead a team. And one of the things they wanted from Mackenzie was to help him learn what that looks like and what that sounds like. So Jordan kind of grew into it some. But my point is, man, if you're a great player, that's what they don't have. They don't have great players. I think if you have great players, then people will follow them and have confidence in them. I think, man, one of the biggest problems with this team, I was listening to you guys talk on Wake Up about the lack of physicality against SMU. I think so much of that comes from just confidence, man. Like those guys, and you guys were arguing over whether SMU is more talented or Florida State's more talented. The SMU guys play with conviction. This Florida State football team does not play with conviction. And to me, that looks like softness, but I just think there's no belief in the quarterback. There's no belief in the offensive line. There's probably now less belief in the coaching staff. And I think that manifests it in how they approach it. So I'm just saying, I think if you have better players, a lot of times the leadership comes from that.
I think we can all agree to that leadership in the coaching side. There has to be some kind of changes. At least I'm saying that. You don't have to co-sign, but my opinion, there have to be changes coming, and I think 1-4 demands that. So when it comes to those discussions, those are big picture discussions. Gene, I want to lean on you for this. Ira after that. But if there are changes coming that cost money, and if there are changes coming, that means that the athletic department, the athletic director have to have uncomfortable conversations with the head coach. Who makes those changes? Who is it? Mike Norvell's choice as to who he brings in, or is there a dynamic? Does there need to be a conversation? Submit a list to me, Mike, and then let's go over it together versus just give me a name and let's go get him. These things cost money, and Florida State is spending a lot of it in a lot of different areas. And in this day and age of NIL, you have to spend more than you ever did before the era of NIL. So, Gene, we talked about this on the postgame show a little bit on Saturday, but you've had a couple more days to reflect on it. Your thoughts on Florida State and the money issue that's ahead for them if they're going to have to be making changes?
Well, they're going to have to spend money, and a lot of money. I mean, the other alternative is you just let this program sink, and they belong right in the ACC. They can be right there with Boston College. I mean, that's the reality of the situation these days. And I know the timing couldn't be worse with everything going on with the stadium, the football complex, having to pay a big check at some point to get out of the ACC. Everything else going on right now, the timing. But you have to be able to unload that money. You're going to have to spend. I mean, I think at least there's going to be an overhaul of the coaching staff. We can get into that in some details, how that's going to happen. That's going to cost you some money. I know someone linked on the message board. I already had a story earlier when all the assistants got their re-ups and renewals and how much that's going to cost. That's going to be a lot of money. You're going to have to obviously put more money in NIL because you're going to have to revamp this roster. I mean, so it's going to cost a lot of money to get this done, but there is no choice. Now, the bigger question would be, where is that money coming from? Because at some point, the well's going to run dry. Because I don't know right now where it is, but you have to spend a lot of money, and how that's going to happen. I think at some point, whether it's happened or it's going to happen soon, I think Mike Alford has to sit down with Mike Norvell and sit there and lay out my plan. You need to make changes. I think Mike Norvell is going to be the opportunity to do it, but he has to lay out the plan to the administration how he's going to get that done. Him saying, we'll just work harder and keep doing what we're doing is not acceptable. And hopefully it doesn't come to that. I think Mike's got to realize he's got to overhaul the staff, and it's going to cost money. But I hopefully Norvell will say, you tell me fundamental changes that need to be made. I'll figure out a way to write the check.
Gene, they're going to pay for it the way I paid for my trip to Ireland with some credit cards, baby. They're going to finance this thing. They're not paying cash for any of this. Listen, man, they've been deficit spending now for the last couple of years. They are mortgaged to the hilt with this, all the buildings they're building and all the money they've already invested in football. So
stadium rights, Ira, you're going to be the Viagra Bowl or whatever. You take whatever they want to call that stadium. You take that money.
Well, man, for sure, they're looking for every revenue source they can. But just to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tom, but I had the line in my column today, like they can't afford for football to fail. That's why they paid Willie Taggart $18 million to go away. And yeah, right now it's $60-something million to make a change at Mike Norvell. That's not on the table, but these assistant coaches that do have 3-year deals or 2 or 4-year deals, that's chump change in the big picture of things. So yeah, it will cost more money to make changes on the staff, but compared to how leveraged they are as an athletic department with all of this money they're spending for football because they want to get into a good conference, they want to be one of the preeminent programs in college football. Anything below Mike Norvell's buyout to me is a drop in the bucket.
So you've covered quite a few of these in the last 10 years, especially with this football program. But certainly hirings and firings and replacements across the athletic department. Michael Alford's done this a couple of times, not for football, but what are some things that you would be on the lookout for in terms of discussions and the way that conversation needs to go, and what are some commonalities of the way these things have worked in the past that you've seen and you've covered? Yeah,
so it's dicey. I know a lot of times people will say I'm calling Michael Alford, I'm emailing Michael Alford, or people that make big donations can get meetings with Michael Alford. Listen, Michael Alford's job is to keep donors happy. It's to keep stakeholders happy. And so he's going to listen to anybody who warrants that kind of access, and he should. But it's difficult, man. It's difficult to go to a head football coach and tell him, these are the changes you need to make. The way it usually works is, unless the coach is on the hottest of hot seats, usually the way it works is the athletic director will ask the head coach, what are you thinking? Let's get on the same page. What do you think we need to do? And then let's see where it goes from there. Go back to when Willie Taggart brought in Kendall Briles. I don't think Willie Taggart wanted to bring in Kendall Briles, but after his first season with the offense being so bad, which, man, those were glory days now looking back, but the offense being so bad, the administration basically forced him to go get Kendall Briles because it wasn't working. So you can get to that point, but it's dicey, man. There are some head football coaches that have huge contracts that will tell an athletic director to pound sand. And now you've got to work through that. They've had a great relationship. My guess is Mike Norvell is not going to be digging his heels in and saying, no, I've got all the answers. That doesn't seem to be who he is. So my guess is they'll work through it together, and then they'll work through it with our good buddy Jimmy Sexton and other contacts they have. But that's how it'll get done. It'll be a kind of a work in progress, unless Mike Norvell says, no, I don't agree. Now you've got a problem on your hands, but I don't think that that's going to be the case.
We're going to round robin here in just a minute, or about a short break away. We've got subscriber questions from warchant.com on the Tribal Council. Then we have some questions from you right here on Warchant TV. You can file those away. We also have some contributions to the program. We thank you to everybody who've made those as we're discussing here on the panel side of the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. We're going to be back after a short little break, and we will take your questions coming up right after this.
Contact Russ Voorhis for an auto quote today.
Told you it was a short break. My goodness, we're back. Let's go with subscriber questions to start this evening. This is from Nollboy02 on the Tribal Council. What streak is more likely to continue? Undefeated against Duke or undefeated against Mac Brown? Those are two games that are upcoming the next month. Let's start. Aslan followed by Corey. Aslan first. What say you?
I'll go with Mac Brown. What's he going to be bringing to town? So we'll keep hold over our great alumnus.
Okay. Corey?
Yeah, I agree with that too. Apparently Duke's undefeated, which is crazy. I know they haven't played anyone yet, but that Florida
They haven't played anybody like Florida State.
I was going to say, Florida State's not going to add to that ledger of impressive teams they played. And North Carolina's on their third-string quarterback, right? And their defense is awful. That seems like a good matchup. And it's at home. I'm going to say undefeated versus Mac Brown. And I'm a little bit frightened, guys, that the Duke streak is probably going to end in Durham on a Friday night.
Would that be worse than the bowl streak ending?
No, but close. I mean, it's pretty awesome. You've never lost to them, and you've been
the only
conference.
one left. I think that's the only streak left since they've been the.
Yeah, that is. I mean, George Bush, the first George Bush was president when Florida State joined the conference, and they still haven't lost to Duke.
Gene, if that happens, I think on the post-game show we have to do something strange.
We will have to definitely. Yeah, I don't know. Look, the positive about that with North Carolina is James Madison scored 70. Florida State might be able to break 21, which is as high this season. Maybe they hit 24 in that game.
It's a fair point. Next question is from Noles 97103. Was the snub a psychologically damaging event for Mike Norvell? Well, fair question. Ira first, followed by Gene. What say you, Ira?
Yeah, no, I think it definitely was. I think it was for everybody. And I think, I mentioned in my column today that there's going to be a lot of time to do the postmortem on this season at the end of the season. And I think that's one of the things we'll have to explore. I mean, look, man, because it wasn't just the fact that you got left out of the game, but it is how the players responded. And so you got left out of the playoff. Then you have half the team, all the best players decide they're not going to play in the bowl game. And I think that was difficult for everybody, and because it speaks to a lack of trust, it speaks to a lack of belief, and I think Norvell took that really hard. Remember the press conference, I don't know if you guys remember this, the press conference, it was a Zoom press conference that Norvell and Kirby Smart did like a few days after the game, or was it the day of the game or the day of the announcement?
No, it was the day of the snub.
The day of the snub.
The day of the snub.
I mean, I've never seen him like that. And then, we had heard, for a little while longer, he was really struggling with that. So yeah, it definitely had an impact. I don't think it's something that is constantly ever present, but I do think something like that could change you, and it could affect a lot of things inside a program. So yeah, I think you're onto something. I don't have any doubt that that's part of probably why things have gone sideways a little bit.
Can I offer a theory real quick, Tom?
Sure.
We actually talked about a wake up that'll be on tomorrow's wake up. I think the snub wasn't nearly as psychologically damaging as the Orange Bowl itself. I think when you go down there and you're at Florida State and you just went undefeated. I know you're a backup, but you think you're a badass. You think you're one of the best college football players. You're on one of the best college football teams in the country, and you're going to be a star when it's your turn. And then you go and get completely humiliated and embarrassed by 60 points, a historically awful bowl game that we don't even count around here. At least I don't. But still, I think that the psychological impact of losing by 60 points in an Orange Bowl, I think that could be as damaging or more damaging than the snub, because the guys that got snubbed are all playing in the NFL now. Like the guys that got them to there are all in the NFL making millions of dollars. The dudes that hung around and played in the Orange Bowl, they're still here getting their heads kicked in still.
Yeah, fair enough. Gene, I'm going to change your question because those are two good answers. This is the next one. Florida State is number one. And feel free to, tinker with this question if you want to use it maybe in a little bit of a different way. But from Florida State's number one, if Norvell didn't receive a contract extension this offseason, would he be the head coach on December 1st? And the way I'd play with this is, how hot would his seat be? How realistic could Florida State look at that situation if, the Alabama romance didn't happen? What say you?
Tom, you may remember on the post-game show, we got a similar question, and I put out a hypothetical. We all remember last season. I mean, that was sure they went 13-0, but there's definitely the Clemson game, a couple others, Pitt, where they could have easily lost those games. So I gave out the hypothetical. Let's see, this was a 2-loss team. The Alabama thing doesn't happen. Is Mike Norvell legitimately on the hot and doesn't get that huge contract extension? Is he legitimately on the hot seat right now? I think he is, because this is a fail of epic proportions, not just by Florida State standards, by all of college football standards. I don't know if there's been a team that had this many expectations be this awful. It's trending to literally, we'll see the over-under. Maybe it's 2 wins, 3 wins, whatever. But that, I think it's very possible. He certainly wouldn't have that giant contract right now if the Alabama thing didn't happen. He probably would have gotten some kind of extension. He's built up a lot of goodwill because of that 13-0. So I don't know if he was 13-0 and only got a smaller extension, if he'd legitimately be on the hot seat. But I'm telling you, if he loses 2 games last season and doesn't get that Alabama flirt, I'm telling you, man, we'd be having a serious discussion right now what that buyout is and whether it's a serious consideration.
On the top line of the screen, Ira, Aslan, and Corey, get your Emperor Commodus on here from Gladiator. Thumbs up, thumbs down. If there was no extension this offseason for Mike Norvell, would he be in trouble right now? Oh. Well, if you count Corey's 2 thumbs up, it's a tie, 4-4. Fair enough.
Listen, even in Gene's scenario, he would have they're 11-3, 11. I don't know. I mean, I don't.
But does Alabama flirt with him? That's I'm putting it all in context. Does Alabama not go after him maybe in that situation because he's not as hot?
I know, but if you went 10-3, 11-3, and then this one terrible season, I don't think he's on the hot seat. I mean, in terms of like a change.
If I could defend my position, I know it seems reactionary. I'm kind of projecting out to what I think the season will be. And if you go from regular season wise, 12 wins to 3 wins, that literally, I think, we talked about this on Wake Up Warchant. I think that's probably the biggest minus win margin from one year to another in the history of college football. This isn't a normal step back. This is a leap back into a fire pit. Like, you don't go from 12-0 to 2-10. Teams don't do that ever. And not only that, his offense is atrocious. It's not even close to being average. And I think that's the concerning part. It's not like even Hugh Freeze, his team is coming close. You know what I mean? They're 2-3, but hey, a couple plays here and there, right, Tom? They're 5-0. Yeah. But it's so bad, Ira. That's why I say that he would, if they went 2-10 and their offense averaged 15 points per game, maybe his seat isn't fire hot, but he would have to make massive changes to keep his job, in my opinion, because the offense has been so bad and this has been such a step back.
But that's, to me, it's the same. It wouldn't change that much from where it is now in the sense of he's got to make changes. I mean, like, he has to make changes. And if he had gone 10 wins or 11 wins last year and this situation unfolded, he'd have to make changes. The thing is, he hasn't played that card yet. Every coach gets that chance to play that card. And now if you get it wrong and those changes don't do anything, then you're screwed. But if you make some changes, it gives you a life for another year. And then if those changes work, now you're in business. If they don't, you're in trouble. So that's all my point is. He hasn't played that card yet. So that's why I wouldn't have said he would particularly be on the hot seat. He just have to make changes.
Ira, you spoke to this during the Jeff Cameron show today a little bit too in your interview. But Aslan, I want to ask you first here for NoleBiz on the Tribal Council. Is firing coaches midseason on the table, practically, financially, et cetera? Just your perception of that kind of a move, Aslan. Do you think that would be something that the fans would appreciate, or does it just seem like, that's more of a token move than anything that actually moves the needle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a token move, I think, because you would just promote from within to take over. I mean, let's say Alex Atkins, they dismiss him of his duties. I mean, you're going to elevate Gabe Fertitta, and Gabe Fertitta was more or less the offensive line coach for the first 3 games of the season. So you're probably not riding with him in 2025. I know, Randy Shannon's a candidate that people always talk about moving on from. I guess you can elevate Ernie to that spot, but I've always underestimated or undervalued the impact of linebacker. So I don't even know how much that makes you feel great about things moving forward. Now that you got rid of Randy Shannon for Ernie Sims, but maybe you're thinking there's some hot shot linebacker coach that can be a co-defensive coordinator and bring some new concepts to the table. It's a token kind of move. I would think. It would not project anything that makes you feel great about the path forward, other than the fact that they're going to have to make a change, obviously, because they've relieved somebody of their duties.
Ira, I've heard your answer on this, but is it practical to make that kind of a move, or do you think it's important that he makes that kind of a move? What side of the fence do you lean on?
Yeah, I don't think he has to do it because he does have, I think, some reasons where he's not on the hot seat right now. So I don't think he has to do it as a token gesture. Financially, I don't think it's a problem. They're going to have to make some changes. That's going to be a financial hit to some degree. At the end of the season or now, it would be the same thing. But the other thing is, people have talked about Purdue. Was it Purdue that fired their offensive coordinator 3 games into the season? The difference there is Mike Norvell is your play caller and offensive coordinator. So that's the only position I would say right now that you would want to fire and make a change based on performance, like Corey was saying, is the offensive coordinator. Alex Atkins has that title, but Mike Norvell is the offensive coordinator of this football team, and he can't fire himself. So I don't see.
Yeah, he can. He can fire himself, Ira. Let him fire himself. Let Lawrence Toafili call the plays. Have a player coach and it can't be any worse, Ira. It literally couldn't be any worse if Toafili was calling the plays.
All right, here we go. Thumbs up, thumbs down again. This question from Squiffy Knoll. Let's see. The cheapest tickets for this weekend's game on StubHub and SeatGeek are $30 at present. Do you see that going higher or lower? Thumbs down for lower, thumbs up for higher. This is a question about how many Clemson fans are going to travel, is what it is.
Oh, yeah, good point. I'm going to go up then.
It's going to be Miami-esque ticket prices.
Okay. Even with a reduced capacity. Yikes. Okay. But Corey says people are driving down from Clemson to come enjoy what's about to happen. Last subscriber question of the night comes from Georgia Knoll. I will go to Gene, followed by Corey. Opinions as to whether Norvell will lean less heavily on the portal going forward. Will he do so? Gene, you like empire building as much as the next guy. We all know that. That's why we're all here on the screen. So what say you about the portal? You think he's going to do it less, or what's going to be his approach?
Well, that's kind of one of the things, and I agree with Ira earlier when he said, look, I think Michael Alford's going to go to Mike Norvell and say, what is your plan going forward? Big picture, little picture, coaching staff, all this. I think part of that will be, what is your philosophy going forward on portal versus recruiting at this point? I think we've seen at this point the overemphasis on the portal is a dangerous game you're playing. We saw it. He put all in this season. I don't know if you could say one of the transfers in the last year, can you say any of them has worked out? I don't know if a single one has played out, at least to this point. So, I mean, you've got to build that base through the recruiting. And I don't think Dabo's right either. Most of the major programs rely heavily on the portal as well. But I think he needs to come forth with a balance. So I do think he's going to revisit that a little bit. Of course, that's harder said than done, because a lot of times you go out and try to recruit more. It's going to be hard to recruit when you're a 2-3 win team. And so it's going to have to come through NIL. And so I think it'll go back to the NIL, have to maybe put more emphasis on recruiting instead of paying a bunch of these, 1-year transfers.
Corey, your thoughts? Obviously, no matter how you slice it, it's going to cost you money because now when you're bad, you got to overspend in order to get kids to pay attention or coaches to come down. But your thoughts on that question?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. He's going to be coming off a 2 or 3 win season. And I haven't seen enough from the underclassmen to think that gets substantially better if you don't hit the portal hard again. You've just got to hit it better. They like Gene said, they struck out a lot this year, but I don't see enough young talent on this roster, specifically at the line of scrimmage, to think that they're good enough to triple their win total to 6 or 8, 9. Like I don't see that on this roster right now, and they're clearly not killing it in high school recruiting. So I don't know that you have a choice. What are you going to wear another 3-win season? Like you've got to go get players. And you again, I know this wasn't the question. You have to figure out your quarterback position. You got half a season now. You got a lot of runway. Figure out if the guy is on the roster. But so because you don't want to spend all of your portal money on one player. But by God, yeah, I don't see this roster and think, yeah, once these young pups get starting, this is going to be a playoff contender again. I think they're going to struggle to win 3 or 4 games next year if they don't get some big time players out of the portal.
Sorry to interject, Tom, but do we think that the portal is still going to provide like really high level program changing talent the way it did 2 years ago? Don't we? I mean, I'm of the belief that seemingly every major program now has a well-connected, well-established collective that's going to keep the Keon Colemans of the world probably in house. So I get it. Like, to Corey's point, like the underclassmen haven't given you a lot of hope, but I don't know if there's as much hope in the portal as it was like 2 years ago. It feels like.
Well, my theory real quick is where I think they got off target. I mean, again, it's easy in hindsight, because I was like everybody else 9 months ago, celebrating some of these portal guys they brought in. Hey, this guy was a 5-star coming out of high school. This guy was a 5-star. And, these guys came from Alabama. I mean, this is going to be awesome. And I think that's where they got off track a little bit, was not going for guys that had proven themselves somewhere else. I mean, almost all of these guys were not guys who had played where they were before, other than DJ. And so you got to get back to that. I think, to your point, Aslan, yeah, it's going to be hard to go to take a starter from Auburn if Auburn wants to keep them. But I got to think, man, Florida State, with the NIL that they've got with Battle's End, can still go get guys out of UAB if Alabama doesn't want them, or guys out of the either the FCS level or small FBS schools who want to be in a bigger school. So it's going to be harder to find them. They're not going to be the 5-stars you recruit out of high school. But to me, that's the best path. It is going to be a challenge getting guys from premier programs.
I would say their motto, their whole motive in the offseason to be go get players from teams that they're upset that they left that team. Like, I would think the Oregon State team is the only one that was upset, and not from DJ leaving, but from Lola Hea. I don't think Alabama was upset that they lost any of those guys. You know what I mean? Albany was upset when the defensive end left. Western Michigan was upset when the defensive tackle left. I think that's what they need to do. Go get players that are huge losses to the programs they're at, not guys that haven't accomplished anything. I think maybe they change the way they do it.
It's almost like the R&D budget, research and development, maybe for scouting and evaluation. Maybe that's a path for Florida State.
I think they got, and they have a scouting department. I just think they got enamored by the fact that those players were interested in them, and it was seductive, but it clearly hasn't worked out.
Speaking of seductive, Zyler is looking for a reason to be seduced to watch the game this weekend and the games in the coming weeks. This is something we're seeing a lot of. Sorry, Director Ben, forgive me. I'm mashing as quick as you are. He says, are there any bright spots or players to look for when watching the next game of the rest of the season? I'm borderline apathetic. How in the world do you fight the apathy? You guys on the top line have been to all the practices for the staff, more so than Gene or me. So, Ira, go ahead. Who would you hang your hopes on for turning on the tube on a Saturday?
I mean, I think everybody's going to agree with me. The young DBs, Edwin Joseph, Quindarius Jones.
I thought you were going to say Master Mono.
The young DBs, and then the young skill guys. I was thrilled that Landon Thomas got in. Amari Williams didn't come up with the catch, but that kid is super talented. I think that might be the first time. Of course, in a game, he can't catch the ball, but I'm telling you, he is one of the most athletic tight ends and best pass catchers I've seen at that position. In Mekhi Danzy, a lot of the skill on offense and the DBs on defense. Look for those guys. Hopefully, they'll get more times on the field.
We want to thank Jeff Hill for his contribution. He says, I don't expect a total rebuild this soon. I grew up watching Bobby. He set the standard. At worst, I thought this season we will finish 9-3. Norvell better make some changes, and that's what we all expect to be coming. Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate your contribution. This is one of the longer names. He showed up for the post-game show. I don't know if he's been on Wake Up or not. Ukrainian mail-order bride industry is booming. He says, Norvell had success in the portal and became his end-all, be-all. You have to be elite to be able to recruit at an elite level. You can't be consistently great like Clemson is now or Coach Bowden was back then. Your thoughts on recruiting, guys. Is it all NIL based in your opinion? Gene, I'll start with you here. Does NIL speak louder than the ability to recruit, or does Florida State need to get better at whatever the art of recruiting is in the NIL era?
Answer to your first question, yes. It's
okay.
In most cases, NIL is going to speak. Now, there you look. If you're going against, I don't know, just throw Auburn out there, and you guys are in the same stratosphere in terms of a pricing structure or how your NIL deal is going to work. Sure. I mean, I think relationships, coaching, comfort levels. Sure, those all come into play, but at the end of the day, it's the mighty dollar speaks. And a lot of these guys, even realistically, the numbers show they aren't making the NFL. So if they're going to make their bank, they're going to make it now in college. So I think it's a huge factor, and it's by far the number one factor there. So you have to be smart about it, though. Obviously, they're unlike some schools. It is limited to some extent. So you better make wise decisions, and then you got to balance that with what you're paying for transfers as well. So it's not easy.
It just stands to reason, right? We're all sports fans. How many times in our lives have we heard of a free agent taking less money to go somewhere else? Now it does happen, and there are
Tom
hometown
Brady
discounts.
took pay cuts.
Yeah, well, he took pay cuts. He gave hometown discounts. Chipper Jones he didn't get as much money as he could. There are instances, but 97% of every free agent in modern sports goes to the highest bidder. That's how we all live our lives. Gene, I would have gone anywhere else, but you gave me so much money, I had no choice. I had no choice.
That's right.
The schools that have gotten discounts, I think Alabama, Nick Saban, they got discounts because, man, and I think Kirby probably gets discounts. If you've got a proven track record of getting guys in the NFL and a high level first day picks, then you're going to get a discount. But where Florida State is right now, they're not going to get a discount. And while I'm babbling, let me just say my thought real quick, Tom, is he's going to have to change his approach to high school recruiting if he wants to recruit in the high school level. He did not hire a bunch of good high school recruiters. He did not hire a bunch of guys who have a track record for that. He opted for coaches and continuity and chemistry, and that all served him well. But if he wants to get more serious about high school recruiting, that's going to have to be part of the changes he makes on the staff.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Is like it's a tiebreaker. The relationship can be a tiebreaker if the money's close. Mm-hmm. If you're an NFL factory, that can be a tiebreaker if the money is close. But, maybe they didn't have the relationship thing to be a tiebreaker. Aslan, I'm going to ask you based upon this because this is a related contribution, and thank you, Eric. When coaching staff changes are made, do you see them all being replaced with individuals from the power conferences or more up-and-coming group of five? Seems we need recruiters with ties in the Southeast. The recruiting part aside, Aslan, when let's just say they make some big changes to the staff, would you like to see guys who have a power track record or, they're trying to mine for guys that might be up and coming from a different place?
Hate to go against my co-host, but I think I might lean towards Ira's kind of thinking when he talked about that they're just so overly extended when it comes to spending on football. I can't imagine they're going to go short shrift on replacing, let's say, a coordinator or a position coach. But Corey and I have talked about, are you at a place right now with the college football landscape, kind of going back to the recruiting aspect, where it's hire a coach, a coordinator that's only $650 a year and they're living life and they love how they are, and then use some of that other money to go and acquire better players. Again, I don't know how much of that, Ira can probably speak to it better, how much of that money is able to be, moved over to other expenses, if you will, for the program. But I don't know. Again, if they finish the season 3-9, and let's just say, I'm sorry to keep picking on Alex Atkins. I like Alex Atkins. I know a lot of people think that we're not holding him nearly as accountable as he should be, but let's say Atkins moves on for whatever reason. When you come off a 3-9 season, you can't go get the offensive line coach from Tulsa. I don't think, you have to get somebody with some kind of either, and I don't really want to go down the NFL route and get a guy that's got that background. I think you need to get the guy that's been in that SEC ancestral recruiting ring that knows the guys that you have to talk to when you're trying to get the best player out of, Baton Rouge or a guy out of Jackson, Mississippi, guys like that.
Well, Ira,
can I interject real quick? Oh, sorry, Gene, go ahead.
No, just real quick. I was going to say Billy Napier be available.
Yeah.
He's got an offensive coordinator. Say, Mike, you're delegating play calls. He's recruited down here. He knows the landscape. He can coach his last game at Florida State, and then go right across the sideline.
Corey, any interjection you want, but then also just, it has to be an attractive place for a coach to say yes as well, because wouldn't your first question, if you were up for that job, be, well, is the guy that I'm working underneath going to be here for more than a year or two? That's got to be part of the negotiation as well.
I mean, if you're in the SEC, if you're not at Georgia, who is comfortable where they're at? They're all getting fired within 2 or 3 years. So I don't think that would necessarily be a deal breaker. Also, the contract that Norvell has, I feel like makes them untouchable till 2026. So you at least got a couple of years. And I just think going back to it, we just talked about how, you've got to stockpile this roster with players. I want a offensive coordinator / offensive line coach, whatever it is, whatever changes you make, that works within Mike Norvell's system, like that knows how to coach the position in Norvell, let's say Atkins, let's use Randy Shannon as an example. Let's say he goes and you're hiring a new linebacker coach. Well, bring in a new linebacker coach. I don't care if he can recruit or not, because we just talked about it. I don't think that's necessarily – in fact, I know it's not necessarily nearly as big a deal as it used to be. You don't have to have connections in South Florida anymore. You have to have bags of money. But what you need to do is be able to teach linebackers how to cover in a zone. You need to know how to fit a run gap. Like, they need to be coached better. Get them better players, but get yourself a coach that you believe is a really good coach, right? I mean, I don't know that relationships matter at all anymore as much as the fundamentals of the sport. In believing in the guy you're hiring is actually a good coach and not just a guy that has great relationships with people, but his guys are 130th in the country in rushing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to consider there. If you can check all the boxes, yeah. But if you can only check 2 out of 3, which 2 do you pick? It's a fair point. NIL is going to be a big part of this, one way or the other, for Florida State to either retain the younger players they like on the roster or to go grab new guys out of the high school ranks and the portal. Sky Ninja with a contribution. Thank you very much. Is it possible Dillingham was the real quarterback guru? Travis Nixon, his freshman at Arizona State, isn't awful. I thought Tokars was supposed to be good. Listen, for my 2 cents, guys, I mean, they made a gamble on DJU. They thought he could be the game manager. I don't think anybody brought him in here with the idea that he was going to be the featured player in the offense, and it didn't pay off. I mean, it's blowing up in their face. Does that, retcon everything about what Tony Tokars could be relative to Kenny Dillingham? Ira, your thoughts?
No, I mean, listen, Kenny Dillingham, from what I understand, wanted Tony Tokars to go with him when he got the head coaching job at Arizona State. And so he values Tony Tokars greatly. I think Kenny Dillingham's a really good coach. He's obviously having success there. And what he did, Bo Nix was pretty remarkable, to be honest with you. And he gets a lot of the credit for Jordan Travis. So I think Kenny Dillingham clearly knows what he's doing, but he valued Tony Tokars, wanted to bring him with him. I don't think Tokars is the problem. I think you nailed it. They thought look, man, it's a little bit of hubris. Mike Norvell thought he could bring something out of DJ that wasn't there, and he thought it would fit with this team, and it clearly hasn't, but partly because this team isn't what he thought he was going to have.
Devin Moore, contribution, thank you very much. My dad was on the 93 title team, and we watched every game together. This has been the most silent we have ever been watching Florida State football. I can understand that. Thank you very much for the contribution. Nunu Braxton. Someone needs to go to Jeremy Pruitt's house with a boombox blasting Baby Come Back by Player. He probably would hit up a couple places around town if he came back. Cool Creations. No one has answered this. How in the world did we score so quickly and effortlessly in Ireland on the first drive? Aslan, any theories?
They did against SMU.
They've had a few good first scripted drives, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they did that back in. Didn't he do that in the first series of the first game? Norvell, that horrible team he inherited. I thought he went down and scored on the
Georgia
first
Tech.
drive.
That was the Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I think that was like the only score of the game. I mean, he just does a fantastic job of scripting that first series, but unfortunately that's it.
I've always argued, can he not just script 60 plays? Does he have to stop at 8? Just script the whole game, Mike.
Yeah. That was, I think it was James Blackman was the quarterback that day. Then they had the weather delay. Right? It was the weather's problem. It wasn't Mike's.
Right. I was just going to say, after you get off the script, the problem is your quarterback and now they have to go make plays. Like the script, they work on that script so much over those last couple days a week to make sure they get off to a great start. After that, guys actually have to make plays.
Can we break it down real quick? Ira, you're old. Gene, you're old. Y'all are both. Well, we're all old. I'm old too. Y'all are older than me by a few. There was a presidential debate or something where the famous line was, "It's the economy, stupid." Like, I don't remember whose campaign slogan that was, but it's the economy, stupid. At the end of the day, right now, it's the quarterback, stupid. That is so, like, if they had a good quarterback, we wouldn't be having an emergency Monday smash. Now, they would not be number 5 in the country. They would have suffered a loss or 2. But the quarterback play has been so dreadful, and it fits so awfully in this offense that, man, I do have hope that if they're not on the roster, they're out there somewhere. I watch football all the time, gang. I see quarterbacks running around making plays all over this great country of ours. Well, somebody is out there, maybe they're already in Tallahassee, that can make this offense successful in 2025.
Well, is Castellanos not a senior? I'm sorry. Is Castellanos not a senior yet? I mean,
He's
they have to have a better NIL at Florida State than Boston College, right?
Correct. Yes.
He is a senior,
Yeah.
Ira?
Yeah, no, he's not a senior. And,
Well, there you go. Problem solved. Corey, you okay with Castellanos? I think we're good.
Well, I think there's two parts to this. Number one, I agree with you, Corey, and that's why I pushed back in that first post-game wrap in Ireland when you said, what is Mike Norvell's offense without Jordan Travis? And my point is, what is it without a good quarterback? And I think that's really just about any offense other than Georgia or Alabama when they've got these massive, great offensive lines and running games. If you don't have that, and Florida State clearly does not have that, then you have to have a great quarterback. But the other part of it with Castellanos, Gene, to your point, listen, man, I ripped Jimbo to no end about not adjusting his offense to his quarterback, especially when James Blackman – I'm getting the thumbs down from Aslan. When James Blackman had to take over as a starting quarterback and he just kept trying to run the same offense he had run before, we all ripped him for that. Mike Norvell deserves heat for not adjusting to what he's going to have at quarterback. And he, listen, I don't know if he ever considered – Castellanos wanted to come to Florida State coming out of high school, but he wanted to be a quarterback. And Mike Norvell thought, no, you're a running back. Well, Jimbo didn't want Lamar Jackson because he didn't think he could be a quarterback. These coaches have to understand, man, you have to have playmakers one way or the other and then adjust around them. And I think Mike Norvell's making the same mistake to some degree.
And you know what helps with playmakers, Ira, is a quarterback that maybe gives you an extra 4 seconds for the receivers to get open. That helps. Yeah. You see that a lot. You see it against Florida State all the time. They are literally 0-5 in the quarterback battle. Every single one of those kids they played so far this year, not from great programs, not from blue bloods, all would be an enormous upgrade in this offense to what they currently have. So please fix it, Mike. We can't be doing emergency Monday smashes.
We're breaking the glass. We'll be breaking the glass again next year.
I just envisioned Mike at a red light at like Centerville and Capitol Circle. His car's been silent the whole drive back. He goes, I thought we could run the ball. Damn it. Just thought we could run the ball. One more big picture question. We're going to wrap it up here in just a couple minutes. One big picture question, then we want to get to the quarterback thing before we wrap, because there is a quarterback change this weekend, according to national reports. Spartan Knoll, this is for Eugene. Spartan Knoll, Ralph is asking, Big Ten SEC meeting next week for 4 playoff spots to talk about 4 playoff spots after the current 2026 deal with the playoff runs out. Does that meeting that they're having, basically the two czars of the sport, the two polar ends of the sport, make Florida State's situation worse, better, not an issue at all? Your thoughts on that?
I don't have to know what they're talking about. Anytime the SEC is involved in making a decision, it's going to be the ACC and Florida State's detriment. I mean, there's no way if they're getting together. That's not a good thing. The two behemoths are getting together and teaming up. That's nothing but bad news for Florida State. Another reason why they need to get the heck out of this conference as soon as possible. That's pretty simple there.
Our guy, James B., this is related to the news of the day that there will be a different starting quarterback, according to multiple reports, for Saturday's game against Clemson. How would this get leaked by ESPN Pete? Why would Florida State want to give Clemson time to prepare for a mobile quarterback? That question, plus the idea of Brock starting this weekend. Ira, does it change your idea about who's going to win the football game? And when you say no, what do you think is going to be different?
Well, and real quick onto the question. Nobody from Florida State leaked that information to they didn't not want that information out there. If you watch the press conference today with Mike Norvell, he got asked 3 or 4 different questions about the quarterback situation and was Brock Glenn listed as or specifically because of the injury to DJ Uiagalelei. It was a significant injury, and there was concerns about whether or not he'd be able to play this week. And Florida State wasn't going to put that out there. Mike Norvell doesn't want to put out injury information about backup tight ends, let alone your starting quarterback. That somebody else in the program talked to somebody, and they talked to Pete Thamel, and he confirmed it. So that's how that got out. But to me, it doesn't change much, man. I just think the one thing I would say it could possibly change, and this is where going back to where I was talking about players playing with conviction. If Brock Glenn makes some plays, if he gets some plays out of that quarterback position, I think it could change how everybody else does their job on both sides of the ball. That's what great quarterbacks do. They lift everybody else. Everybody else raises their level of play because they're inspired. They have not gotten any of that from DJ. And if Brock could give that to them, I don't know that he can, but if he could, that could change the whole team because guys, I think they would hit harder, they would run harder, they'd try to break more tackles. It's just human nature when you're inspired by a better player at quarterback.
Aslan, any visions of a smag like performance against Clemson? Oh my God, we got the ball back. Any magic in Doak Campbell a decade later for a backup quarterback starting a game?
Unfortunately, no. But congrats to you and Corey. Both your teams made it to the playoffs.
Yes.
Shout out to whoever in the comment section pointed out that it was James Carville as a campaign manager for Clinton in '92 that said the whole "it's the economy" stupid.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so we got all that clarified out there. Yeah, I'm not feeling exactly those sort of vibes out of that. But a commenter that was interesting, somebody said maybe DJ's dad leaked the information. That almost makes sense to me. But I don't want to go down that road. Sorry.
That's fair. Corey, we're going to close it with you tonight. We're going to bring you in. Maybe you could be more effective than the Mets closer today and the Braves closer today in the first game because they both took turns blowing saves. Any more interest? Any more interest now that Brock Glenn is playing versus DJU on your part, personally speaking?
Yeah, for sure. Because I'm worried about 2025. I guess I'm worried about November of 2024, but just to see what it looks like. But I'm really worried about 2025, and I think the next 6 games they need to be there's a runway. Yeah, I think you have 3 freshmen that are all capable, probably Division I quarterbacks at some level. See who is going to be the guy in 2025, and you have time. You have plenty of practice time, which is very, very important. You also have game time. Season's lost. Nothing to lose more except more games, and you're already going to lose them anyway. So go see what you got with these 3 quarterbacks. But it does give me – I feel bad for the kid that it's like, all right, Brock, your first start is in the ACC championship for what we thought is a playoff spot against a 10-win Louisville team. No pressure.
With like
raining.
With like 6 hours notice, yeah.
Yes, right. Yeah. So good luck. Go get them. Now, Brock, you get to start again. Oh, it's against this juggernaut, and you have no players left. And now, Brock, look, I know our offense is the worst in the country. I get it. But this is an opportunity, my man. It's only Clemson. What are they going to do? So it's not fair to Brock. He's been thrown in a horrible situation 3 starts in a row. But I want to see what he's made of. What if he goes out and gasp, leads them to 17 points? Then all of a sudden you're cooking with gas a little bit. So yes, I do think I couldn't. I think I told Ira. I know I told Aslan. I'm like, man, I couldn't. I didn't need to watch DJ play any more football. I just didn't. It's not his fault. It's not all his fault. Not throwing the blame just at him. No need to see that offense with him anymore. At least it'll be something different. It might be a horrible painting just like the other one, but it's a different horrible painting.
Yeah. Last time I asked you guys to do thumbs up, thumbs down. How many of you feel better after this discussion we had? Do you feel better about the problem? Thumbs up, yes. Thumbs down, no. Yep. Oh, Gene feels better. Ira feels medium. Ira has not changed, and Aslan is feeling better. Thank you all very much tonight for your contributions. Wake Up Warchant with Corey and Aslan coming up in your feeds and on Warchant TV first thing in the morning. Seminole headlines coming your way tomorrow with Ira, Corey, and Jeff live here on Warchant TV at 1:00. Practice coverage tomorrow. Oh, so much more at warchant.com and here on Warchant TV. Ira, are you closing the night with a shot, or are we just signing off? What are we doing here?
I might down the whole bottle, but I'm going to do that after we go off the air.
Fair.
Okay. All right. Then for Director Ben Spicer, did a great job behind the scenes. Thank you to everybody who asked questions on warchant.com on the message boards. We really do appreciate that. Those of you who asked questions here on Warchant TV and contributed to the program, we appreciate you. State Farm agent Russ Forhis for sponsoring the show. As always, thank you for your support. One of the OGs at warchant.com. Ira Schofel, Aslan Hajavandi, Corey Clark, Gene Williams. My name is Tom Lang. We'll talk to you next time on Warchant TV. And stay safe out there, everybody. It feels like a dangerous time.